Have you ever felt like the whole world was weighing down on your shoulders? That everything was about to collapse, and yet one small decision, one shift in perspective, could pull you out of the darkness? This isn't just the story of an American man named Mike. It could be your story, my story, any of ours. It's a story about the power of responsibility and gratitude, two simple things that can completely change the course of a life. Mike was born in Ohio, in a poor working-class family. His father worked in a steel factory. His mother cleaned houses. They labored endlessly just to put food on the table for their 3 children. As the eldest, Mike should have carried responsibility on his shoulders. Instead, he grew up rebellious, reckless, and careless. At 20, Mike cared more about parties than work. He blamed his parents, blamed society, blamed fate. "I'm poor because I was born poor. I fail because life set me up to fail," he would say to his friends. Many nights, his father came home with hands covered in grease, exhausted after another long shift, while his mother sighed heavily from a day of scrubbing floors. Mike barely noticed. His head was buried in his phone, laughing with friends, pretending that none of the weight of life had anything to do with him. Then came the first hard shock. At 24, Mike borrowed money to invest in a small cafe with friends. Within 6 months, it collapsed from poor management. The debt piled up, and Mike couldn't pay back the bank. One night, he saw something he'd never seen before: his father crying. The man who had worked 30 years in the factory, who had always been strong, broke down in front of his son. "Mike," his father said through tears, "I worked my whole life to give you a chance, but you're destroying yourself. When will you take responsibility for your own life?" The words cut deep, but Mike wasn't ready to face them. Instead of accepting his failure, he ran away. He left home, cut off contact, and drowned himself in nights of drinking and laughter, anything to avoid the truth. A year later, Mike was waiting tables in New York when he met Richard, a middle-aged businessman who often came to the diner. Richard always sat in the same booth, always carried a small notebook, and often talked with Mike. One day he asked, "Mike, are you happy doing this?" Mike laughed bitterly. "Happy? I have nothing but failure." Richard slid the notebook toward him. "Happiness doesn't come from how much you have. It comes from how you see what you already have. You're young, you're healthy, and you still have a family waiting for you to come back. Instead of blaming, start with responsibility. Start with gratitude." Those words haunted Mike for days. Finally, he opened a notebook and began writing down 3 things he was grateful for every morning. "I'm alive. I have a job. I have 2 strong hands." At first, it felt silly, but slowly, Mike realized how many priceless things he had always ignored. For the first time in his life, he stopped running. He decided to rebuild. He took on as many jobs as he could: waiting tables, delivering food at night, washing cars on weekends. He was often exhausted, but he reminded himself, "This is my responsibility, no one else's." He began reading books on finance, self-development, and discipline. Every night, he wrote his gratitude notes. After 3 years, the debt was gone. Not only that, he had saved enough to try again. This time, he didn't rush. He trained as a barista, studied how to manage a business, and eventually opened a small coffee shop. But Mike's cafe wasn't like others. On every table, he placed a little notebook where customers could write down something they were grateful for that day. He called the cafe Gratitude Coffee, and something extraordinary happened. People loved it. They came not just for coffee, but for the feeling of slowing down, of reflecting, of writing down what mattered. Local media picked up the story of the Gratitude Cafe, and within 2 years, Mike expanded to 3 locations. At the opening of his 3rd cafe, Mike invited his parents to cut the ribbon. Standing in front of hundreds of guests, he embraced them and choked back tears. "I used to run away from responsibility. I used to make you ashamed. But it was your love and your sacrifices that taught me gratitude. Today, I promise I'll live a life worthy of what you gave me." The room went silent. Many people wiped their eyes. From then on, Mike dedicated part of his time to giving back. He hosted free talks in his cafes, sharing his journey from a reckless, irresponsible young man to someone who rebuilt his life through responsibility and gratitude. He taught young people to keep gratitude journals, to own their choices, to stop blaming and start building. His message was simple but powerful. Responsibility gives you control of your life. Gratitude makes you love that life. And maybe, right now, as you're reading this, you see a bit of Mike in yourself. Maybe you've been running from responsibility. Maybe you've forgotten to appreciate the things you already have. But remember this: one change in mindset, one small habit can change everything. If this story touched your heart, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone you love. Who knows? Tomorrow you could be the next Mike, the one who discovers the power of responsibility and gratitude and builds a life worth living.